Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another one of our interviews with subject matter experts from all over the world, sharing information that we can use as counselors and advisors working with students. And today I have with me a very special guest, Laura Young. She is the Director of Enrollment Management for the School of the Arts and Architecture at UCLA. Welcome, Laura.
Hi, everyone.
Did I get that right?
Yes.
It's a mouthful, right?
It is. I have a bit of a title.
And we got to get that in there. That's an important aspect of it.
I got corrected on that when I first got hired. So
oh, did you?
That's all I hear is my old HR manager. It's the school. So
it's like George Washington, So we do want to recognize that. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you come to be in this role in enrollment management for this particular program at UCLA?
Well, I started out as an art student. I came to UCLA to be in the art major, and I was always into the visual and performing arts at a really early age, and I wanted to be an arts major, not necessarily because I wanted to go into a museum or gallery career, but that's how making artwork was how I processed the world around me. And I had a mentor in high school who encouraged me to really think beyond, like, can you paint? Can you draw? Can you play the piano? Can you impersonate celebrities? Because I was also I played classical piano and I did acting and comedy improv. And when I went to college, I was really conscious about how much I liked to solve problems and my curiosity about people and things and being comfortable in front of an audience. So that was really my context within the major. And then how I got into the work was I by accident, one of my student advisors said, we need volunteers for current students at this open house for admitted students. You should come, like, show up at this place in this time. And I met my predecessors, and kind of that's how it started. So I've been on campus. This September will be 20 years if you take into consideration being a student and working here. And this is my 15th year working in admissions.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I think you hit on something that a lot of times we don't recognize, and especially one of the communications with parents that have a hard time explaining to them is that creative process and how it is solving problems. Mm-hmm. And so when I am an advisor and somebody comes into my office and says, I want to study in performing arts, dance, theater, jazz, something like that in college, what question should I ask as an advisor?
Two big questions can get a lot of information out of the student. I like to ask, are you performing? Are you acting? Are you dancing? Are you making music? Do you seek out opportunities to do it and learn? Do you watch YouTube videos to learn how to get better? Do you love watching films to watch actors? Do you join school groups where you can perform? So if performing arts is the way that you build community and is a place where you feel supported and challenged, you might like to have that experience in college. Another question is, do you want a performing arts major or do you want an art school / conservatory? Because you can find performing arts majors at research universities or liberal arts schools, either as a major or within a professional program. And then there are standalone programs. So if, for instance, a student likes other subjects or even wants to double major or minor, then a larger campus that has a wider range of majors might suit them. If a student likes the idea of focusing and wants to be around their people all the time, that is kind of like walking across campus and knowing that every single person there is an arts major, which is not an experience that you get at the high school level typically. Mm-hmm. Usually you're like in a corner, wearing all black, and there are like three of you, where coming into an arts campus or a conservatory, then everyone is there. To say something a little bit about conservatories, there's a lot of attention paid to a conservatory, but this particular type of school actually attracts a real minority of students. Most schools are looking for potential from their students, but conservatories are looking for a very high level of polish. So they're looking for somebody who's going to preserve and perfect their classical craft in dance, theater, or music. So conservatory students are unusual, and it's really, it's not typical for high school counselors or IECs to get a hold of a conservatory student, because they're the ones who've been studying with their private instructor since they were, 10, maybe even earlier, and that private instructor is the one who's really steering them towards their selection of higher education. So, there's also that student who maybe wants to study something else, like I want to be a neuroscience major, but still wants to be in the marching band. So a lot of schools have a lot of opportunities for meaningful extracurricular participation. So it's always good to research what clubs and groups are on campus as well.
I find a lot of times students want to have that creative outlet and that creative opportunity, but they also want to explore other things.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense to find that definition and what's going to be the right answer for that particular student, because it is going to vary. And as you said, in the high school, sometimes they are feeling like on the outside, and so in a conservatory or a more concentrated arts environment, they'll find their community.
Bunch, yeah.
Yeah. So when you're doing performing arts, oftentimes one of the admissions requirements is auditions. Mm-hmm. So can you talk about auditions? And some are recorded, some are live, some are in groups where you go do a whole group of them at a time. So talk about that and what that means.
If a school is asking for an audition, you can be reasonably sure that the audition is going to drive the admission decision. It's not going to be the final say, because most programs are going to be looking at academics and balancing that with the audition, but the audition is going to be significant. As for video auditions or remote auditions, some schools will allow it, but some schools won't. There are programs out there that absolutely require you to show up in person. There are some schools that use live video conferencing to connect with applicants who can't be present in person, but this is a pretty recent development. I guess for what it's worth, my big question here is that will remote applicants who are able to participate in a live video conference receive scholarships at the same rate as students who audition live? Because schools can absolutely admit a student based off of a video, but what we've typically seen is that scholarships are going to students who attend a live audition. So if you can go to a live audition, it's a good idea if it is possible, because there is more of an exchange of information, and the student also has the opportunity to be in the driver's seat because they can ask questions and see who's auditioning them as well. So it's more of a two-way street.
Mm-hmm. It becomes more of a conversation between the two, and it's like doing a school interview. You're auditioning and seeing what the program is going to be as much as the other way around.
Yeah.
So, so what are admissions committees looking for in their applications or their auditions?
Conscious preparation of the audition. So if you're applying to drama or musical theater, choosing monologues and or songs that are suitable for your personality, your body type, your vocal range. If you're applying to music, most programs will list required or recommended repertoire at a certain skill level. So can you perform it without struggling? If you're applying to dance, the program will usually list if they expect to see a particular technique at the audition. So we want to see that you're choosing to apply to fill in the blank school with purpose. So the more that you can personalize your application and direct it, the better. Do you want to study with a particular music instructor who only teaches at this school? Like, we want to hear things like that.
So are there certain things or certain pieces that are so overused that they become cliches that people recommend? It's like writing the college essay. Sometimes they've heard the same "I have a dream," quoted so many times, like it has lost its meaning. So are there certain things that are used quite often that maybe students should find more original type of thing?
Yeah. It's like, I know one of our dance professors always brings up, I guess the word has gotten out that the Nutcracker essay is something you want to kind of move past. She said,
Uh-huh.
and she said with real disappointment, I just don't see as many of them as I used to. And I really enjoyed them. Like, I think you were in the minority. There's, within the artist statement, or if there's an extra essay that goes with the audition, it's really, really common for the student to maybe set up, I'm waiting in the wings, I'm waiting to go on stage. This is sort of my, this is my swan song. I'm going on stage for this final senior performance, and using it as a metaphor for I'm going to get on stage to go to college really soon. We see a lot of that. I'm not going to say that you shouldn't do it, because there is a way to do it well.
Mm-hmm.
We do see an awful lot of it.
Yeah, it's like the football essay, right?
Yeah.
So
but if there's a way, if you've got something else to say, if you're kind of tossing around a couple of different ideas, then maybe start with the others first.
mm-hmm.
See what happens.
Well, it goes back to that creative side. How creative can you be in thinking about what your approach and your writing, and also the same thing on the auditions and the pieces that you prepare.
Mm-hmm.
Don't pick the most popular song or dance piece that's focused on at the moment, that's most popular right then. Maybe find some things that are a little less well known. Is that helpful? Or
yeah, I mean, I think I think to kind of set up a parallel, there's some people are just going, they're going to apply to Harvard because Harvard is Harvard. But then, yes, everyone's going, they might sing a selection, they might sing the same Adele song over and over and over again.
mm-hmm.
But is it really the right thing for you? Is it the right vocal range? Is it the right tone? Mm-hmm. Is it supportive of your personality? So like really think about how to represent yourself there.
I think that's the key, and that's the real key, and that shows that purposeful preparation.
Yeah, don't be afraid to show your personality.
True. That's very true. So how does the timeline work for students is in the performing arts? How is it different from a student who's not looking at going into performing arts in college?
So very similar to applying to any program. Earlier deadlines, you'll find them in October or November, and later deadlines are in January, February. And some schools have rolling deadlines. Something to be aware of is that sometimes schools will have different deadlines for a regular application and the audition or any supplemental material. So it's important to keep track of that. For competitive audition-based programs, you might see something called a pre-screening, which is a video that the applicant sends in for review prior to the application. So before you pay any money, before you do anything, this activity usually happens in October, November, and is a way for admission committees to know if the applicant is competitive for the program. So thanks to, American Idol, and So You Think You Can Dance, there are a lot of people who aren't really able to gauge their good fit for the program, and we don't want to have somebody flying across the country and attending an audition for a program that they're not a good fit for. Mm-hmm. So if the student doesn't pass the pre-screening, then they don't have to submit a full application to a program where they're not going to have a chance. So if they do pass the pre-screening, then you know that if you come to a live audition, then you're being seriously considered and you're performing at a level that is commensurate to what they're expecting.
And these timelines are the same for both domestic and international students?
Typically, yes. Mm-hmm.
Because so many of our students in our audience work with international students coming from all over the world. And
yeah, I mean, performing arts programs tend to be pretty transparent, and they'll put out their requirements pretty early. So for music applicants, for instance, they will usually be posting their recommended repertoire at around summer, maybe even earlier. So you can get an idea of how to prepare for it, because it takes time to learn the piece and practice it to the point where it's comfortable at a performance level, or to learn a monologue, or to learn choreography. So they're usually quite good about, I mean, performing arts students are usually preparing up to a year in advance, and, you know, programs are aware of that. So they tend to give time.
So that brings up another question. Is it, do you see students taking a gap year between high school and applying to college, or, and then using that time to prepare and then applying, or on the other side, using a gap year, if they apply and then are accepted and then saying, I'm going to go take a gap year? Are you seeing that? Are the schools seeing that happen?
Not at a rate that's different from any other program in college. Usually students in high school, especially if they're working with private instructors, or they're in the marching band, they're in the theater program, it's much more of a, you know, a concentrated experience for them. So they're usually pretty fresh coming into the audition process if they're coming out of high school. For transfers, the experience that they're coming in with can be a little bit different. If a student doesn't have a lot of opportunity to pursue the arts in high school, then maybe a gap year to kind of work on some things, or maybe they attend community college and come in at a transfer level, although the transfer game for performing arts is quite different. Usually programs will want, they're very open, if they're open to transfers at all, they're super interested in bringing them in the sophomore year, because with performing arts programs, especially in drama, musical theater, they usually will have like a first year experience where everyone takes the same classes together, which is a community building exercise, and also contextualizes all of their curriculum for the next 3 years. So with transferring, it can get a little funky there. So, I mean, most students, when they're coming out of high school, is when they apply.
Okay. And does UCLA accept sophomore transfers for the arts programs?
Music, the School of Music does.
Okay.
Theater and film do not. And then the School of the Arts and Architecture does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. And what ways do you see students using, once they get their degrees in dance and performing arts, how are they using those degrees?
That one, like, what are you going to do with that degree? Just like with any other major in college, you're going to have the acting students who become actors in the same way that engineering students become engineers. But the majority of students are going to be using their performance skills in much more expansive ways. So for instance, I have a friend who was a theater nerd in high school and has a BFA in acting, and then he went to law school and now he's a litigator. So he goes to court all the time, and he credits his theater training with being able to know how to relate and be relatable to the jury. So he can walk in there and he can scan all 14 people, 12 jurors, 2 alternates, and get a read on all of those different people really quick. And in a second, he can adjust his voice tone, vocabulary, facial expressions, body language to make them like him. And which is really important when you're trying to convince them of something. I have another friend who is a professional dancer, and she ran her own dance company for many years. And she's also the director of communications at an aerospace firm.
Wow.
So I have another friend who's a jazz drummer, and he was in a college band with a computer science major, and now they have a music software and gear company. So a website that I really love for career information is the Strategic National Arts Alumni Project, so SNAAP. So this is the only data set of its kind that looks at graduates of arts programs and shows how they choose their careers and how they behave in the marketplace. So it's really reassuring to see how well arts graduates navigate uncertain economic terrain, something that we've been dealing with for many years now, and how more often than not, they're really powerful entrepreneurs by nature. Like they're used to the ground moving under their feet, and they're used to kind of suspending their opinions and building out their concepts. So they can be incredibly powerful in a lot of different situations.
Well, and I think it goes back to using that creative, mindset and orientation, and being able to think outside the box in ways that really can make such a difference. So what other words of advice would you give us to share with parents or students?
For the student, work hard, really find value in the process, and want to get better. So educate yourself on the history of performance as a way to preserve storytelling and culture for generations. So especially outside of Western framework, you're going to be a performer long after you graduate from college. So this is a lifetime thing. So treat it that way. College is, it's a blip in the radar as far as anyone's concerned. Keep up your academics. If you're applying to bachelor's degree programs, we're also going to be looking at your academics. So if there's an audition, that's usually going to drive the selection, but it's your academics that give us more information about your success within an academic environment. So if you have solid academics alongside a great audition, then that's usually a place where scholarships can kick in. So just try to keep it above C's if we can. Don't flunk anything. And then for families, just be supportive. Arts programs are excellent at preparing those creative problem solvers, as you were talking about, which the world desperately needs. Everybody, for a long time, everybody's pushing like engineering, coding, but computers are going to be really good at coding because artists have trained the computers to be really good at coding. So creativity, kind of working outside of the algorithm, is going to be more valuable as we move forward. You can look at the SNAP data, but then there's also this really fun website called willrobotstakemyjob.com. And you can sit there and you can plug in careers. I did for an entire afternoon. And the three main areas that are the least susceptible to automation are medicine, education, and the arts. So artists are the ones who are helping us to understand how we as a society feel and find value in experiences. There is never going to be a day where somebody is going to pay $800 to go see robots perform Hamilton. It's just not going to happen. So remember that.
That's very good advice. And it is interesting to look at and think about, well, where is the future and Gen Z, where are they going to go? And the trend is toward being more entrepreneurs, being very creative and being their own bosses, and so having that creative and expressing themselves in those ways that's meaningful. And I love how you said it's not just it's a lifetime commitment. So I think
artists are the ones who are really thinking about what is my personal brand, me incorporated. So they're thinking a lot. They've been thinking along those lines already, and that's what arts programs are training them to do. Is how do I get my point of view across? How do I identify spots in the marketplace where I feel like an experience is lacking? How do I address it? And then how do I promote it? How do I engage with my public and make things better, more personal? I mean, this is incredible training moving forward. So the secret's out.
Well, and that also points out how social media and all the media formats now with YouTube and all these other formats, it makes it so much easier to be able to not only produce it, but consume that kind of information as well.
Yeah. So there's a need for being able to understand how to communicate across a variety of platforms. Like, how can you convey a feeling with your arm or the tone of your voice, but then also teaching you how to be a conscious consumer of that information as well. What am I getting visually? What symbols am I getting from the world around me? So artists they're hip. They're with it.
They're here to stay, is what you're saying. And I think that helps us as parents, as counselors, because we hear that, well, what are you going to do with an art degree? And the answer is it's unlimited. There's just so many themes. So, well, Laura, thank you very much. This has been very informative. To learn more, we've got these two websites, so I will post those. Where else would you recommend? How else can people learn more about this topic?
If you want to email me directly, I've got some resources. I mean, you and I connected through NACAC and WACAC, so the National and the Western Association for College Admission Counseling. So okay. I've presented quite frequently on these topics, okay. and I've got some resources that I can send to you. And if anybody has any super special questions, whether it's about UCLA or about sort of the arts admissions field overall, what's happening in the visual and performing arts college landscape, then you're welcome to, the royal you are welcome to contact me anytime, and I would be happy to help you.
Well, thank you, Laura. Thank you very much. Have an enjoyable day down there in sunny LA.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.